Exactly how do you future-proof your marketing in a cookieless world? Hi everyone, I'm Yandra and I'm here at eTail West, day 4 in Palm Springs. And the 3 most common things that we've been talking about in this conference were AI, performance, and personalization. But behind the scenes, cookies are disappearing. So the big question is, what is actually happening to your growth strategy when tracking gets weaker? Let's hear from Butler and get some of his insights.
So not an apocalypse, but potentially a blessing. Some of them grew their businesses from small startups to bigger companies, leveraging ads and ad platforms that had cookies that tracked the users that they saw the ads, and then eventually people that went on to buy, right? So that tracking then told ad platforms to show ads to those types of people, and that generated a pretty virtuous cycle. And then over time, the ad platforms got really good at figuring out who's about to buy, right? So that tracking started making the ads more effective. But as companies went from like 0 to sales growth, that sales growth years later, basically today, you see all these same brands, they're not growing anymore, even though they're getting more and more conversions tracked, right? With the cookies don't track all the conversions they used to because they're not firing as many times or as frequently on certain types of devices like iPhones or with certain browsers or in certain geolocations and so on. So the tracked conversions from the cookies that still work are no longer helping find folks who are net new to grow the business. Those customers have been acquired, and then what's happened with that segment of marketing spend is it started to just get reinvested in the same people over and over again. So that marketing tracking cookie has taken what was a good growth engine from a digital ad perspective, and it started turning it into like more and more of a kind of waste engine where more of the ad dollars are now getting eaten up by a growing pool of people that have the tracking on their computers or on their phones. And so more ad dollars are getting shown to these folks, but those folks have already been converted or they're gonna buy anyway. So the company's not seeing an impact on the top line, but the ad spend keeps going up and up. So in some respects, having the cookie die off or it not function as much anymore was, to some degree, could be a blessing, right? Because it could break that cycle of waste. Now, it's still a problem because people are still operating their ad buys on that cookie, on that tracker. And so the addressable or the trackable portion of people has gone down, right? So if you had 100 people where it worked, maybe it's only 60 people now where it still functions. The budgets didn't scale down automatically, right? So if you had like $1 for every person that it could measure, you might have still had $1, but now you only have like less people it's working on. So in the old days, it was $100 for 100 people. Now it's $100 for 60 people. So it's more dollars getting spent on a smaller pool of people. And those people happen to not be likely to be a new customer. Or you're not really driving a net new sale. So this is painful, and we're in this apocalypse right now, or people are scrambling to say, how do I get the tracking back? Is there a way I can fix the broken pipe that they see the loss of tracking as this problem, right? And we're scrambling to figure out, is there a technical workaround? The truth is that there is no technical workaround. So people are spinning their wheels. But I guess the other side of it, and the blessing in disguise of this painful part, is that this is blowing open the myth that this has been working at all, even if all the cookies were still firing. And with that pain, hopefully comes a reckoning and folks to start thinking about, hey, like I do want to advertise, these channels are good for acquiring customers, but maybe there's got to be a different way to be optimizing the spend. And it turns out there is, and it doesn't require any of the cookies to work at all. That's a different topic and a different question possibly. Yeah, so not an apocalypse, but potentially a blessing. If the cookies all stopped working tomorrow, 2 things would happen instantly, right? Some ad spend would just cease, or it would go down to a minimal amount because none of this cookie data would be fed back into algorithms. So tracking data would go down, media that's tied to a target cost per acquisition based on an ad platform cookie or a TROAS setting from an ad platform value perspective suddenly these campaigns would stop spending and everyone would start freaking out what's happening. There is a small portion of media campaigns that would instantly get better and no one would know why. And that would be where the ads could still keep serving, but they wouldn't be tied to this bad signal. That's actually worse than random. And essentially ads would just start showing to everybody who potentially could be in the addressable target. And there's likely a good chance that's more effective than how it's being optimized right now. That would be a smaller portion of media, typically more of some of the upper funnel media or social consideration part of the marketing cycle. So it'd be funny, it'd almost be a eureka moment for some folks, but there'd be a lot of panic, right? In the kind of bottom of the funnel, search, affiliate world, right? Where you'd start seeing like overnight things would be totally chaotic. I don't think user level tracking changed at all. You can still measure at a user level very effectively as a company using your own data. And not only is it as legitimate as it's ever been, but tools are available now to make it much more robust and manageable than it's ever been, right? Bonds is not the only company in the world that can help you with that. So it's honestly never been a better time to track user journeys. What can't be done is other people can track your users for you. You can't call Facebook and say, track my user journey. You can't be like, doesn't Google have that data? That is no longer the case. They cannot. So the ability to do it, it's never been easier, better, and a better time, frankly, to begin diving into how you'll do that and understand the customer journey for the part of the market where you can see the user path. It isn't everybody, but it is material and it's very impactful. But you cannot outsource the decision or the tech anymore. That is not an option. An effective marketer. So are you good at marketing? That's like the question you have to ask yourself. Is your marketing basically a set of operations tied to technologies that used to work that no longer function and you never really knew how or why, or strategically there wasn't a good understanding of your customer, what they wanted to do, where they engage? You didn't have a theory of growth for your business. You will be exposed now. But if you were like a great marketer and you have a very strong strategy and can execute and scale, you've never been more freed up because you don't have to fight these bad technologies anymore because frankly, you don't have to use. What I would add here is as a marketing team, it's like the marketing teams and agencies that understand that the role that they have at the company is to grow it are in a great position now. Now you'll have to begin unwinding the marketing teams have been asked to be and are they focus a lot on how can I help tell a story about why marketing is good to my organizations and C-level suite, right? So this idea of the more data, the better, and the more sophisticated data, the better, as a way to unpack and explain to a finance team or an executive that like, hey, look, we really move the needle in marketing. You know, you give us 10% of the available capital every year to market, and that's actually not the right amount. We're more important than that. Here's how we know we should allocate 15%. We'll have to abandon that instinct that the issue is that they don't care enough or love marketing enough, because that cycle of having more evidence is not necessarily, especially when you're using a lot of ad platform reported metrics or other ad evidence, right? That is not necessarily evidence of impact. And so you're adding up all this like ammunition trying to convince for a bigger budget. Meanwhile, the company is very frequently not growing. So you should get the budget by simply investing in things that demonstrably are lifting the underlying business, even if you can't say specifically down to like the last pixel or cookie, what exact thing is driving that lift. If you can be and scalably begin moving that top line number and that company is going back up and to the right, the finance team might not be any more in love with marketing yet, but 10% of more revenue is more marketing budget. And so that's how the teams have to like really start thinking about growing their influence and budgets, which everyone wants. But stop thinking about it as a case where you're trying to build for more share and start thinking of it as what's the motion that I can confirm and validate that the business has gone up, and then the money will come to me. Here's one thing. You won't be able to completely change your operation tomorrow. but you will need to start changing it tomorrow. So a first step in that process is going to be reframing some of the operations or people's understanding of the operations on your team. And that will start with a couple key questions. And this can be for your team or your agencies or whoever, like who's ever basically executing for you, especially if they've invested in trying to prove incrementality so far. Where you'd start with saying, okay, great, thank you. Like you guys have heard us talk about needing to move to incremental outcomes, and you have this data point you're working on. Maybe you're seeing some lift on a YouTube campaign or a search campaign or whatever. Bring that data, but please also bring me the conversions as well. And we're gonna look at it together. And I'm gonna ask you, we're gonna ask ourselves, okay, great. Now that we know there's 5% more sales in incrementality, but we have 1,000 sales listed in conversions, let's ask ourselves, what are those 1,000? If it's not in the sales data on an incremental side, what the heck is this? That's the question. And then as you unpack that question, it's gonna start answering itself of, wait a second. Maybe this, what really is this? Maybe this wasn't a net new sale, or maybe this was an affiliate purchase that was counted in my paid search, or maybe it was an online sale that got counted 3 different times. Whatever it is, people will start like thinking about that question more. And then you can then take, no matter whether your team gets there that night or it takes a few weeks, to start thinking about what's the next steps, given the fact that we've identified that some of this data is not meaningful. You can help them take that next step, right? But you must start by addressing the issue. And it's what's the 12-step program? Like the first step is like, you must have everyone discover and understand for themselves that there is a problem. And that's what I would do.